Welcome to our episode on singing. Today we're going to learn about how singing together, and the key word is together, uh, can improve our social, emotional, cognitive, and physiological state. Can calm and soothe us, and help us engage with other people. So William James said about 100 and something years ago, "We don't sing because we're happy. We're happy because we sing." And I think William James realized that singing was not just about having fun and enjoying ourselves and others, but it also had profound effects on our perceptual, on our thinking, feeling, perceiving, and behavioral systems. And the research has come along and really proven that. So we say things like reduction in stress, improvement in mood, an increased capacity to bond with other people, to make relationships. Uh, Singing can wipe our brains clear of fear and threat and completely change our behavior, and all very quickly. So one of the things we'll talk about today is how singing is really a breathing exercise. And like many of the other techniques we've talked about, turns on the vagal brake, slows the heart down, sends a signal to the brain, everything's okay, we're safe, and we can engage with others. So let me give you some examples of how we've used it and how we've learned about it, and then I'll give you a brief and embarrassing demonstration of singing. Okay, so first example really goes back about 5 or 6 years, and it's my youngest grandson, Leo, who was either colicky or just not feeling well, couldn't settle, was crying, and nobody could seem to get him to settle down. And so I was up at his house and I picked him up and started to walk him around. And unconsciously, really, I started to hum "Lean on Me." And so, and we walked around, and within a minute or so, he stopped crying. And within a couple minutes, he was sound asleep. And that's interesting, but was more interesting what my daughter said, which is, "Please stop humming before you put us all to sleep." And I realized just how quickly something as gentle and mild as humming, a song that we all know, can chill everybody out. And then, more recently, my grandsons are now 10, 7, and 6. I was with the 6 and 7-year-old in the car, and I had a playlist I put together of "You Are My Sunshine." And I thought those are easy songs to sing. We could sing them together, and it would be fun. And it certainly does promote good behavior as well. But I was really just looking for some time together with them. And so we put on "You Are My Sunshine," and after just a couple of verses, Leo, the 6-year-old, said, "Pa," he said, "can we change the music? It's making me yawn." And then the other guy said, "I'm getting tired too." And so you see, we can use music, and singing in particular, to just calm ourselves down, and very quickly. The second example is really a clinical example. This is a kid who was having a really tough time, young lady who's having a really tough time. It was a Sunday night about 10 p.m. and I got a call, and she had been in the woods. Her house was on the river, and there was a stretch of woods between her and the road, and she had been trying to run in the road, and she had 2 staff people who were trying to keep her from hurting herself in doing that, and so she had been restrained on and off for a couple of hours, and she was in the woods, and they called and said, "Can you come and help out?" So I got there, and I've known her for quite some time, and as soon as I got there, she sort of settled a little bit, and I asked the guys to go back to the house, and we sat and talked for a bit, and she was feeling pretty good, much calmer, and I said, "Can we head back to the house?" And she said, "Sure," but as soon as she got to her feet, I could see that flash in her eyes, and I was thinking when we get back, things may take a spiral downward. Anyway, I said, "So let's sing." So we were in the woods, walking back toward the house, singing "Keep On Rockin' in a Free World," and quite loud. And so it must have appeared quite crazy from the riverside of things. But we were singing really loud, and you could see it sung her right into a different state. And when we got back to the guys, she was calm, re-engaged with them, apologized for some of the things she'd done, and things settled pretty quickly. And the guy said to me, so what did you do? Because they had been at it for a couple hours. And I said, well, I put in 15 years. That's part of it. You know, I'd known her for quite some time. And, but also the singing just put her into a different state and helped reorganize her, and she behaved much better, obviously. The last example is something, you know, I learned more recently. Another young lady who left her home for good reason, but it was kind of a crisis situation. But she left on good terms, and she did it well. Anyway, she came to the office, and we settled things down, and that was on a Friday. And then Monday morning she came in, and you know, she was pretty anxious about where she was going to live and, you know, what had happened and all that stuff. So she said, can we sing? And I said, sure. And you know, my go-to song is always Lean on Me. I said, well, would you like to sing? And she said, Lean on Me, of course. So we sang Lean on Me, and you know, she looked a little better after, but not a lot better. And so then our second favorite is Bridge Over Troubled Water. So we sang that, and again, she looked a little better, but not great. And I realized that, you know, I am inclined to use music to calm people down when sometimes people need to be lifted up. And so I said, so do you want to sing a little bit more? And she said yes, and then she picked out a number of songs that I didn't really know. They're newer songs, but they're much more invigorating. You know, a lot more energy, and she sang pretty loudly, and we sang together. And you know, here's a tip: if you go on YouTube and you put the song and lyrics, it'll come right up on the screen. So for somebody like me who can't remember any of the words for any song after 1975, that's actually pretty useful. We sang for an hour and a half, and when we were done, because when we were done, we went to acupuncture together, but when we were done, she was in a completely different state. Her anxiety was gone, and she was feeling really positive. So, you know, it's a very effective tool to help people behave better, feel better. So let me give you the demo part of it. And I really want to go back to this idea that singing is a breathing exercise. So if you think back to our breathing episode, our episode on therapeutic breathing, there were a number of components of therapeutic breathing that help to relax the body and accomplish all you want to accomplish. And one was to breathe slowly. So get to about 6 breaths per minute. The other is to take a deep breath, diaphragmatic, belly breathing, fill up the chest, and exhale slowly. Well, when you think about singing, it's all about exhaling air over your vocal cords, and that's where the singing comes from. And since singing is mostly about singing, you want to spend most of your time exhaling. In order to fuel the exhale, you need to get that air in, because you're going to need a lot of air to do all that singing. And so it slows down your breathing. It extends your exhale, and you need to get the deep breaths in order to be able to fuel the singing. So let me give you an embarrassing example of that. This is one of my favorite songs, and I think it's really good on the exhale. And it goes something like this. Doc Watson. Was in the spring, one sunny day, my sweetheart left me, Lord, she went away. And now she's gone, and I don't worry, 'cause I'm sitting on top of the world. Same exact thing. Long exhale, lower the number of breaths per minute, and get that deep breath in order to fuel that singing. So, you know, the good news about singing is you don't have to be good at it. You just have to do it. Okay, so now some of my favorite research on singing. What you're going to see here is a series of brain slides. And the first one is a brain that's quiet versus a brain that's listening to music. And you can see there's a lot more activity in the brain that's listening to music. The second set of slides is, again, a brain that's calm and quiet, and a brain that's listening to music. And what you see in the brain that's listening to music is the frontal lobes are lit up and the right hemisphere is lit up. But the left hemisphere is pretty quiet. The next one is the singing scan, and what you see is, or a language scan, and what you see is the language centers on the left hemisphere are lit up, and your frontal lobes are lit up, but there's little activity on the right hemisphere. And so the last one is singing, and what you see is lots of activation in the brain. You see the frontal lobes and also both hemispheres lit up. So if your brain is occupied with threat or fear, one way to wipe that out is to do some singing, which then takes over your whole brain. And the last slide, set of slides I want to show you is a slide of a person singing, and then a slide of a person singing in a group. And when you sing together, there's again much more activity in the brain. So that's interesting. The second study I want to tell you about is about the physiology of singing. And so singing has pretty dramatic effects on mood, stress, cortisol, which is the stress hormone, and even immune function. So when you look at immune function, it actually improves your immune function pretty dramatically, even improves the activity of your immunoreceptors. So it's quite dramatic. It decreases your cortisol, which is your stress hormone, so again, we're lowering our stress. And there's a number of studies now that show increases in beta endorphins, which is the endogenous opioids, those internal painkillers that we generate, and you actually see an increase in people's pain threshold after singing, and an increase in oxytocin, which is really dramatic because it's the bonding hormone, so it helps us relate to each other. All right, so there you go, there's a little bit on physiology. Next study is one of my favorites, and actually there'll be a link on the website, tamingthetigervt.com, to this video, and it's the researchers who did this study, and it's on choral singing. And what they found is that people who sang together in a chorus, first of all, it increased their heart rate variability, and heart rate variability is a marker for health, but also a marker for the capacity to manage strong emotion. And they found that it synchronized people's breathing and heart rate. So if you want to build relationships with people, get in a calm state with them, and it'll quickly turn on these relationships. So again, singing is a great way to build relationships. The next study is called the Icebreaker, and again, it's one of my favorites. So in the Icebreaker, the question is activities we do together help us to bond, or is singing some special form of bonding? And so they have multiple groups where they do different activities, and one of them is singing. And what you find in the singing group is that they bond very quickly. Again, lower pain threshold, higher positive affects, lower negative affects, but this bonding happens very quickly. In fact, at the end of the study, the singing group after the first session has bonded better than the other groups throughout a number of sessions. And this makes a whole lot of sense from, in terms of evolutionary biology. Because you think that man was evolved to live in groups of 50 to 100 people. But you don't really have the time to form interpersonal relationships, strong interpersonal relationships with 50 to 100 people by the way we normally do, through interaction and activities and things like that. So it's essential to survive to be able to bond with the whole tribe, because you've got to share resources like food, and you also have to defend the group, and you have to be bonded in order to do so. So it makes a whole lot of sense that people sang together before they hunted, sang together before they fought, and that bonded the whole group. And the last study I just wanted to mention is on familiarity and music. And so music gives us very quick access to the emotional centers in our brain. And if we're in a bad state and we want to get into a better state, music is a great way to get to our emotional centers quickly and switch our state around. And so in this study, what they found is that the more familiar the music, the quicker was the response in people. So again, the takeaway lesson for me is sing together, sing often, and sing at least some of the same songs, so when you need access to those centers, they'll be available. All right, so singing, great for our mood, helps us to bond with people, it decreases our stress, a whole lot of other things, so get out there and sing for better behavior.